The fluorescent lights of the Silver Star Diner buzzed like dying wasps at 2 in the morning. Maya Thompson wiped down the counter for the third time that hour, her dark hands moving in practice circles over the cracked formica. 32 years old and her back already ached like she was 50. The coffee pot hissed on the burner behind her, filling the empty diner with the smell of burnt beans and broken promises. Outside, rain hammered against the windows in sheets. Maya glanced at the clock. 3 more hours until her shift ended. 3 more hours until she could go home to her son, Malik, asleep at her neighbor's apartment. 8 years old and already he knew what it meant to have a mama who worked nights, who came home smelling like grease and exhaustion, who counted pennies on the kitchen table and prayed they would stretch until Friday. The bell above the door chimed. 2 truckers stumbled in, bringing the smell of diesel and cigarettes with them. Maya forced a smile, grabbed the coffee pot, and moved toward their booth. This was her life now. Had been for 2 years, ever since Marcus left. No note, no explanation. Just empty drawers and a stack of unpaid bills that still made her stomach clench when she thought about them. She poured coffee, with steady hands, even as her mind calculated tips, and grocery lists, and the electric bill that was already 5 days overdue. The truckers barely looked at her. Most people didn't. She had become invisible somewhere along the way, just another woman in a stained apron serving eggs at 3 a.m. To people who would never remember her face. But Maya remembered every face. Every rude comment. Every generous tip. Every man who let his eyes linger too long. She remembered because she had to. Because remembering meant staying alert, staying safe, staying one step ahead of the next disaster that always seemed to be lurking just around the corner. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Mrs. Patterson next door. Malik had a nightmare, but went back to sleep. Maya's chest tightened. She typed back a quick thank you and slipped the phone away. Someday, she told herself. Someday, things would be different. She just had to keep moving, keep working, keep believing that kindness still mattered in a world that seemed determined to prove otherwise. The rain turned to a downpour as Maya's shift finally ended. She clocked out, pulled her thin jacket tight, and stepped into the parking lot. The diner sat at the edge of town, where the streetlights gave up and the highway stretched into darkness. Her beat-up Honda waited under a broken lamppost, collecting rain like it was trying to drown. She needed gas. The needle had been kissing empty for the last 20 miles. Maya drove to the all-night station 3 blocks down. Her windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the storm. The station glowed like a spaceship in the dark, harsh white light reflecting off puddles that looked like oil. As she pulled up to the pump, Maya noticed the motorcycle. A Harley Davidson, massive and chrome, parked at the far pump. Next to it stood a man who made the bike look small. He was at least 6'4", wearing a soaked leather jacket that clung to broad shoulders. Even from 30 feet away, Maya could see the patches on his back. A skull. Wings. Letters she couldn't quite make out in the rain. The man was staring at the gas pump like it had personally offended him. His hands moved over his pockets, checking and rechecking. Maya watched as he walked into the station, spoke to the clerk behind the bulletproof glass, then walked back out. His body language told the whole story. No money. No gas. No way home. Maya finished filling her tank. She should have left. Should have driven away and minded her own business. That was the smart thing to do. The safe thing. But she had been on the receiving end of bad luck too many times not to recognize it in someone else. She walked over to him, her sneakers splashing through puddles. Up close, he was even bigger. His face was all hard angles and old scars, stubble darkening a jaw that looked like it had been broken and reset more than once. Rain dripped from his hair onto leather that bore the unmistakable words, Hell's Angels. Maya should have been terrified. But she had learned something in the last 2 years of barely surviving. Fear was expensive. It kept you frozen. It kept you from doing what needed to be done. Excuse me, she said, raising her voice over the rain. The man turned to look at her, and his eyes were the color of winter skies. Cold, distant. Wary. I can pay for your gas, Maya continued. She pulled out her debit card, the one with exactly $43 left until payday. The machine inside is down, right? I heard you talking to the clerk. The biker stared at her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Just studied her face like he was trying to solve a complicated equation. Maya held her ground, even though her heart was hammering and every instinct told her to walk away from a man who wore death's head on his back. It's too cold to be stuck out here, Maya added. We all need help sometimes. Something shifted in those winter eyes. Not warmth, exactly. But recognition. Like he was seeing a real person instead of a ghost or a threat. He nodded once, slowly, then gestured to the pump. Maya swiped her card. $30 of gas. 10% of what she had left in the world. The pump clicked and whirred. The biker filled his tank in silence, and Maya waited, getting soaked, wondering if she had just done something incredibly stupid or incredibly necessary. When he was done, he walked back to where she stood. This close, she could see the patch on his chest that read Wolf and beneath it, Vice President. Rain ran down his face like tears, but his expression remained carved from stone. "Thank you," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel under tires. 2 words. But the way he said them felt like a promise or a prayer. Then he climbed onto his Harley, fired up the engine with a roar that shook the rain-soaked air, and disappeared into the storm. Maya watched his taillight fade into the darkness, wondering if she would ever see him again, not knowing that she had just saved her own life. 3 nights later, the trouble started. Eddie Graves showed up at the diner during Maya's shift. She recognized him immediately, felt her stomach drop like a stone in deep water. Eddie had done time with Marcus, her ex-husband. 2 years ago, he had shown up at their apartment, looking for money Marcus owed him. Maya had called the police that time, and Eddie had spent 6 months in county jail for violating parole. Now he was back, and he had brought friends. 2 other men, both with the same hungry, dangerous look that Maya had learned to fear. They sat in the corner booth and ordered nothing but coffee, which they let go cold while they watched her work. Watched her move between tables. Watched her bend to pick up dropped silverware. Watched her like predators deciding when to strike. At 4 a.m., when Maya walked to her car, they followed. Not close enough to justify calling the police. Just close enough to let her know they were there. Eddie called out something crude, and his friends laughed. Maya's hands shook as she fumbled with her keys. She made it home, locked every door, checked every window. Malik was asleep in his small bedroom, his nightlight casting shadows that looked like monsters. Maya sat on the floor outside his door until dawn broke, her phone clutched in one hand, trying to decide if she was being paranoid or if the fear was justified. The next night, they were back. Same booth. Same cold coffee. Same predatory stares. When Maya's shift ended, they followed her to the parking lot. This time, Eddie got close enough to touch her car as she drove away. His smile in her rearview mirror was all teeth and malice. Maya filed a police report the next morning. The officer was young and apologetic and completely useless. "They haven't actually done anything illegal," he explained. "Sitting in a public diner isn't a crime. Walking through a parking lot isn't a crime. I understand you're scared, ma'am, but until they make a direct threat or attempt to harm you, there's nothing we can do." Maya wanted to scream. Instead, she thanked him and left, knowing she was on her own. That night, she paid Mrs. Patterson extra to keep Malik overnight. She went home to her small rental house, the one with peeling paint and a porch that sagged, and she waited. They came at 11:30. 3 sets of footsteps on her porch. The doorbell rang once, twice, then someone started pounding. Eddie's voice filtered through the door, slurred and angry. "We know you're in there, Maya. Marcus owed us money. That debt doesn't just disappear because he did." Maya stood in her dark living room, phone in hand, her whole body shaking. She dialed 911, gave her address, was told a unit would be there in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. A lifetime. The pounding grew louder. Someone kicked the door. Wood splintered. Maya backed toward the kitchen, looking for anything she could use as a weapon. A knife. A chair. Anything. Then she heard it. The sound that would change everything. The deep, thunderous rumble of motorcycle engines. Not one. Multiple. Growing louder, getting closer, until her entire house seemed to shake with the noise. The pounding stopped. Through her front window, Maya saw headlights, bright and blinding, illuminating her yard like stadium lights. The motorcycles pulled up to her curb, engines still running, and men climbed off. 5 of them. 6. All wearing leather jackets with the same patches, the same skull and wings. And at the front, bigger than all the rest, was the man from the gas station. Wolf. His face was a mask of controlled rage as he walked toward Eddie and his friends, who had frozen on Maya's porch like deer caught in high beams. "You boys lost?" Wolf's voice carried over the engine noise, calm and cold and utterly terrifying. Eddie tried to bluster, tried to act tough. "This ain't your business, man. We're just having a conversation with a friend." Wolf moved faster than a man his size had any right to. One moment he was at the bottom of the steps. The next, he had Eddie pinned against Maya's door, one massive hand wrapped around the smaller man's throat. "See, that's where you're wrong," Wolf said quietly. "This woman helped me when she didn't have to. That makes her my business. That makes her protected. You understand what that means? The other bikers had moved in, forming a wall between Maya's house and Eddie's friends. No one was smiling. These were not men who made idle threats. Eddie managed a nod, his face turning red. Wolf released him, stepping back. You and your boys are going to leave now. You're going to forget this address. Forget this woman exists. Because if I hear you've come back. If I hear you've so much as looked at her wrong. What happens next won't be a conversation. Are we clear? They ran. Stumbled down the steps and ran like the hounds of hell were chasing them. Car doors slammed. An engine roared to life, and tires squealed as they fled into the night. Maya opened her front door on shaking legs. Wolf turned to look at her, and for the first time since she had met him, something like emotion crossed his face. Concern, maybe. Or understanding. You helped me one night, he said simply. Tonight, I return the favor. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The bikers were already mounting their motorcycles, preparing to leave. Wolf was the last to go. He pulled something from his pocket and handed it to Maya. A patch, small enough to fit in her palm, embroidered with a skull and the words, Hell's Angels, respect earned. Keep this somewhere visible, he said. Anyone who knows what it means will know you're off limits. Then he was gone, the sound of engines fading into the night, leaving Maya standing on her broken porch with a piece of leather in her hands and tears streaming down her face. When the police arrived, they found Eddie and his friends pulled over 2 miles away, still shaking. They found outstanding warrants and parole violations. They found reasons to make arrests that would stick, but they never found the bikers. Just tire tracks in the mud and the lingering smell of exhaust and redemption. 4 days passed before Maya saw Wolf again. She had been jumpy, exhausted, unable to sleep for more than an hour at a time. Every sound made her flinch. Every car that drove past made her peer through the curtains. Malik had come home and asked why there were scratches on the front door, and Maya had lied, said a dog had gotten loose. She was getting good at lying to protect him. Then, during the breakfast rush at the diner, the bell chimed and Wolf walked in. He wasn't wearing his leather jacket. Just jeans and a plain black t-shirt that did nothing to disguise the size of him or the tattoos that crawled up his arms. He looked different in daylight. Older, maybe. More human. He sat at the counter, and Maya approached with coffee. Her hands were steadier than she expected. Thank you, she said quietly. 2 words. The same 2 he had given her at the gas station. They felt insufficient for what he had done, but they were all she had. Wolf nodded. You don't owe me anything. We're square. But they weren't square, and Maya knew it. She poured his coffee, then surprised herself by asking, Have you eaten? He hadn't. Maya ordered him the breakfast special without asking, and when it came, she sat across from him during her break. They didn't talk about Eddie, or the police, or the fact that a group of outlaw bikers had become her unlikely protectors. They talked about small things. The weather. The quality of the diner's coffee, which was terrible. The motorcycle he rode, a 1967 Panhead that he had rebuilt himself. My son would love to see it, Maya said without thinking. Then she froze, realizing she had just told this man she had a child. Told this dangerous stranger where her vulnerability lived. But Wolf just smiled, a brief softening of his hard features. Bring him by the garage sometime. I'll show him how an engine works. Something unknotted in Maya's chest. She had been alone for so long, trusting no one, accepting no help, that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone offer kindness without wanting something in return. It felt like the first warm day after a brutal winter. Over the following weeks, Wolf became a regular at the Silver Star. He came for breakfast after his night shifts at the custom motorcycle shop where he worked. Sometimes other bikers came with him, big men with scarred knuckles and surprisingly good manners who called Maya ma'am and left generous tips. They never caused trouble. Never stayed too long. But their presence was a message to anyone watching. This woman is protected. One morning, Maya worked up the courage to ask Wolf about his past. They were sitting in his usual spot at the counter, the diner quiet between rushes. You don't have to answer, she prefaced. But I've been wondering. How does someone become part of something like the Hells Angels? Wolf was quiet for a long moment, stirring sugar into coffee he wouldn't drink. I was a Marine, he finally said. Did 2 tours in Iraq. Lost friends. Good men. When I came back, I didn't know how to be a civilian. The structure, the brotherhood, the purpose, it was all gone. I was angry all the time. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't connect with anyone who hadn't been there. He looked up, meeting her eyes. The club gave me that back. A brotherhood. A code. Something to belong to. Most people see the leather and the patches and think we're criminals. Some of us are. But some of us are just broken vets, looking for a family that understands. Maya understood broken. She understood looking for belonging. What do they call you in the club? She asked. Besides vice president. Wolf, he said. It's what they call someone who's loyal to the pack but comfortable hunting alone. He smiled slightly. Apparently, that's me. Why did you help me? The question came out before Maya could stop it. That night at the gas station, I mean. You could have walked. Could have called someone from your club. Wolf's expression grew serious. You treated me like a human being. Not a threat. Not a monster. Just someone who needed help. That's rare. He paused. My mother used to say you can tell everything about a person by how they treat strangers when there's nothing to gain. You passed a test you didn't even know you were taking. Maya felt her throat tighten. I was terrified, she admitted. Standing there in the rain, talking to you. Every survival instinct I had was screaming to run. But you didn't, Wolf said quietly. That's courage. Real courage isn't not being afraid. It's being afraid, and doing the right thing anyway. He stood, pulling money from his wallet for a breakfast he had barely touched. Your ex-husband. He's the one who left you with the debt and the fear, isn't he? Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Wolf placed the money on the counter, then added two $20 bills to it. For your son, he said. Buy him something that makes him smile. He left before Maya could protest, and she sat there staring at the money, crying for the second time, since meeting a biker who had become the most unlikely guardian angel she could have imagined. The changes came slowly, like spring thawing frozen ground. Wolf started bringing Malik small gifts. A model motorcycle kit. A book about engines. A baseball that he tossed back and forth with the boy in the parking lot, while Maya finished her shifts. Malik, who had been quiet and withdrawn since his father left, started to laugh again. Started to ask questions about the world with the curiosity of a child who felt safe enough to be curious. Other changes were more practical. Maya came home one afternoon to find her porch repaired, the wood fresh and solid. The next week, someone had painted her fence. Then fixed the broken window in her bedroom. She knew it was Wolf and his club, though they never took credit, never asked for thanks. Why are you doing this? Maya asked Wolf one morning, her voice breaking with emotion. You've already paid back any debt you felt you owed. This is more than that. Wolf looked at her with those winter sky eyes that seemed a little warmer these days. You know what most people do when they see someone broken down on the side of the road? He asked. They drive past. They pretend they don't see. They convince themselves it's not their problem. But you stopped. You helped. That kind of kindness starts something. It ripples out. He gestured around the diner, at the world beyond. Maybe I'm trying to be the kind of man my mama raised me to be before the war broke that part of me. Maybe I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm still capable of building instead of just destroying. Or maybe I just think you and your kid deserve someone in your corner. Maya reached across the counter and took his hand. It was scarred and rough and twice the size of hers, but when she squeezed, he squeezed back, gentle and careful. You have a good heart, Wolf, she said. I hope you know that. He looked away, uncomfortable with the sentiment. I've done things I'm not proud of, Maya. The patches on my jacket aren't just for show. I'm not asking about your past, Maya said firmly. I'm talking about who you are now. Who you choose to be. That's what matters. A year passed like water finding its level. Maya saved money for the first time in her life, not because she was making more but because she felt secure enough to plan for a future beyond next week. Wolf became part of their routine, part of their small family, though neither of them used that word. He taught Malik how to change a tire, how to throw a punch, how to stand up straight and look people in the eye. He taught Maya that not all men who looked dangerous were, and not all men who looked safe could be trusted. Then one evening, Wolf arrived at the diner with news. I'm buying the old garage on Mason Street, he said. Turning it into a custom bike shop, legal, legitimate. Something I can build instead of just maintain. He paused. I was thinking you could do the books. Part-time. If you want. Maya stared at him. Wolf, I don't know anything about running a business. You know about budgets and making nothing stretch into something. You're organized. Honest. That's more than most accountants can claim. He slid a piece of paper across the counter. On it was a salary offer that would let Maya quit her night shifts. That would let her be home when Malik went to bed. She cried. Then she said yes. Then she cried some more while Wolf sat there looking uncomfortable but pleased, drinking terrible coffee and pretending not to notice her tears. The shop opened 6 months later. Wolf Custom Cycles. Maya handled the finances, scheduling, and customer relations with an efficiency that surprised even her. She discovered she was good at business, good at dealing with people, good at building something from the ground up. Malik spent his afternoons there doing homework, while the sound of tools and engines created a strange but comfortable soundtrack. One Saturday, Maya surprised everyone by announcing she wanted to open a small cafe in the empty storefront next to the garage. Not a diner. Something better. Somewhere people could come for good food and strong coffee, and not feel invisible. She had been saving. Planning. Dreaming in a way she hadn't let herself dream in years. Wolf co-signed the lease without hesitation. Other members of his club volunteered to help with renovations. The cafe opened 3 months later with the name Angel's Diner painted above the door. Maya's own place. Her dream made real. On opening day, Wolf gave her a framed photograph of a Harley Davidson at sunset, the same model he rode. Below it was a small brass plate engraved with words that made Maya's eyes sting. "Kindness starts a revolution." "That's what you did," Wolf said simply. "You showed kindness to a stranger. Now look what it started." Maya hung the photo in the place of honor above the counter. Below it, she placed the Hell's Angels patch Wolf had given her that terrifying night, framed and preserved. A reminder that protection comes in unexpected forms. That family isn't always blood. That sometimes the scariest-looking people have the biggest hearts. The cafe thrived. Bikers came, yes, but so did families and businesspeople and teenagers and everyone in between. Maya's cooking was better than the diner's had ever been, and her smile was genuine because she wasn't exhausted anymore. Wasn't scared anymore. Wasn't alone anymore. Wolf still came every morning for breakfast. Still sat at the counter. Still drank coffee and talked about nothing and everything. Malik, now 9 years old, still asked him endless questions about motorcycles and engines and what it meant to be brave. One morning, as Maya poured Wolf's coffee, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A keychain. On it hung a miniature Hell's Angels patch and a tiny silver star. "For you," he said. "The star is for hope. The patch is for protection. Together, they mean your family. Officially. The club voted last night. You and Malik are under our umbrella. Permanent." Maya looked at the keychain, then at Wolf, then at the cafe full of people who had become regulars, who had become friends. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, terrified and broke and desperate. She thought about one act of kindness at a gas station in the rain. How it had cascaded into this. "Thank you doesn't feel like enough," she whispered. Wolf smiled, and it transformed his face from something hard into something warm. "Then don't say it. Just pass it on. Help the next person who needs it. That's how we change the world. One kind act at a time." He stood, placed money on the counter that was exactly the amount of his meal plus tip, and headed for the door. Maya watched him go, this unlikely angel in leather and tattoos, this broken veteran who had found purpose in protecting others. "Wolf," she called out. He turned back, one hand on the door. "Same time tomorrow?" He grinned. Wouldn't miss it. The door closed behind him, and through the window, Maya watched him climb onto his Harley. The engine roared to life with that distinctive thunder that had once terrified her, and now sounded like home. He pulled on his helmet, gave her a small wave, and rode off down the street toward the garage, the morning sun catching the chrome of his bike and turning it to liquid gold. Maya turned back to her cafe, to Malik sitting at a corner booth doing math homework, to the steady stream of customers who trusted her to feed them and see them. She thought about fear and courage, about strangers who become family, about the ways life can pivot on the smallest decisions. She had stopped at a gas station in the rain and chosen kindness over fear. And that choice had saved her in ways she was still discovering. It had taught her that monsters weren't always what they seemed. That safety could wear a leather jacket. That family could be forged in shared understanding rather than shared blood. The coffee machine hissed. Someone called out an order. Malik looked up from his homework and smiled at her, secure and happy in a way he hadn't been in years. Maya smiled back, then got to work, the tiny keychain with its star and patch hanging from her belt loop, catching the light. Outside, the sound of Wolf's motorcycle faded into the distance, heading toward the garage where broken things were made whole again. Where second chances were as common as engine oil. Where a group of outlaws had become guardians, proving that redemption didn't require respectability, just heart. And in that small cafe with its peeling paint and mismatched chairs, with its photos of motorcycles and patches of honor, Maya Thompson poured coffee and served breakfast and built a life from the ashes of her old one. One day at a time. One kind act at a time. One revolution at a time. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the streets of a town where a single mother and a biker had found an unexpected alliance. Where $30 of gas money had bought more than a tank of fuel. Where a moment of compassion had started a chain reaction that neither of them could have predicted but both would spend the rest of their lives being grateful for. Because that's what kindness does. It multiplies, it transforms. It saves us when we least expect it and most need it. And sometimes, just sometimes, it arrives on the back of a Harley Davidson, wearing leather and patches, reminding us that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have motorcycles instead.